So, uh, welcome everyone, and today's topic is going to be the floating squares. So, what exactly does it mean? So, uh, in this one, we are going to understand how to hold the pawns in such scenarios. So, the rule says imagine a square uh, made up from two pawns being at the edge of the square. So, total five squares, right? If the square reaches till the end of the board, then king cannot hold these 2 points. Okay, that's the whole idea. Basically, if king goes to capture this one will queen, and if king goes to capture this one will queen. How exactly it works? Let's think it out. So let's try the simplest one first. That's what we'll learn in first episode. Let's calculate the most easiest variation first. So first is, oh, it's right to move, I think. Then a4, king e5, e3, and obviously this one queens, right? Next idea is king b5, then this one, obviously. What happens if king c4, a4, e4, king takes a4, and still, since the this square, the king cannot enter inside this square. Yeah, this pawn will queen and black is winning in this scenario. Basically, the idea is, if you imagine a square where the pawns are on the edge of the square there, and the square reaches till the end of the board, that means the pawns, one of the pawns will definitely queen. King cannot hold. If queen is further behind, then it's obvious we can just run any of the 2 pawns. uh, this is the basic scenario. Basically, the king is present in between 2 pawns, and this helps us calculate or save time in the end game. That's the whole idea of understanding and learning the end game, right? Now let's think of a second scenario. The emphasis was on the square that is formed by the 2 pawns, right? It should reach till end of the board. Now in this scenario we have 5 squares, right? And it reaches till the second row. So in this case, it's obviously a draw. How? Let's see. Uh, then this one runs away. A3, and obviously this one wins. So how is it holding? So king c5 first. That's this sort of move do not come to mind initially. See, this is draw, but if I run directly towards a pawn, then I'm losing. Let's think about why this happens. So the key move here is king c5. Okay, so let's try to run this pawn first. Then white is winning, completely winning. How? King b5, a4, and king takes a4, e5, and king will reach definitely. What happens if I do e5? King d5, e4, king takes e4, and it's white winning now. Again, king will reach here. So what's the key move? King d5, king f6. Now I do not want to push this because I'll capture, right? Okay, I can. King takes g6, king takes e5, king takes, and this will definitely draw because I'm inside this box, right? So king will reach till the end. So king c5, and then e5. Your king needs to protect the pawn. This is key in this particular position. What happens if I don't have these pawns? Then black is completely winning. Okay, so 2 pawns basically is winning. Now it's a draw. Okay, so king needs to protect this pawn, whether you have these pawns or not is essentially the way. In normal scenarios, mostly your king will be here capturing this pawn or maybe this pawn, and this is holdable. Let's assume king captured h5 pawn, and this is the position and it's white to move. How do I hold this? King d5, obviously, a5, and after capturing this I'll be on the a4, and this is the square that it will form, and I'm able to enter. White is able to enter. That means this is going to be a draw in this scenario as well. 2 pawns reaching till the end of the rook will be winning. What if my pawn is here? Huh, this is a draw. So this is black winning, even though they do not reach. Let's analyze this as well. So the move we looked at was king c5. If I go e5, then it's draw. I need to bring my king in basically. King g5, d6, and I simply reach. Basically, basically in this scenario, since I don't have these 2 pawns, king is able to protect the e5 pawn, and that's why it's a winning position for black. Anyhow, we know that pawns here and here will be able to reach, and in the scenario where pawn was on e5, it directly becomes a draw. Why? So king d5, and king is not able to reach to the protection of e5 pawn in time. This is simple to calculate. What happens if it's a black move? And obviously I can just run away. He's not going to capture. I don't even need to reach. So okay, so couple of things we looked at. The basic idea is the square, floating squares. Okay, and it says that in positions like this, where you imagine a square where the pawns are on the corner of the square, and if the square reaches till the end of the last row, then one of the 2 pawns will queen. If the black king cannot protect one of the pawns, can't come to the protection. If it's not reaching till the end of the row, then the white king can draw. And we looked at a couple of variations on how exactly it works. The key move here is actually king king c5. King c5 we need to memorize. Why king c5? Because if I start running now, black king cannot leave this. If he comes to f5, then pawn will promote, and if he moves this way, what happens? Then I force the king out, and in this square white king can enter, and that's how he's able to block this pawn from queening. So best scenario is a draw for white in such positions. This is the second scenario where it's a draw. The first scenario is when pawns do form a square till the last row, and black pawn will queen no matter what. And let's see other scenarios where, let's say, the distance is less. Let's suppose king is here and distance is less. In this scenario, both of these pawns could be captured. So basically, two or less than two rows between the uh, pawns, then I can reach till the end, and basically white can capture both the pawns and black is losing. Let's look at this one as well. So yeah, let's skip back to move. So this is simple, I think, easy. What happens if I do this? Then capture and easily reachable. So less than two squares between, and this is losing directly for black. So two scenarios for black losing: when the pawns are not forming the square, if pawns are less than two spaces apart. Now the original rule states that in this scenario, what happens in this scenario? So six squares between the pawns, okay, and six square. So this is the square that the pawns form, and this is winning for black because it includes basically our rule. So let's say we give black to move. Let's say white to move. Aha! In this scenario as well, white is so amazing. So e4, e5, king f5, e4, h6 takes, and this. Okay, so you're basically going away, protecting this pawn and trying to run. If that's not the case, if you're not able to reach this side quickly, then it's losing. It all depends on king's distance. And what happens, so it will be same thing. I try to push, white can try to go for this one, and white king cannot penetrate this square, so it's losing. And what if I try to, okay, uh, instead of going up I need to push this pawn, so I need to drag the king away from the protection of these two pawns. And yeah. So the key idea when a single king is defending two pawns is, do you have a way to stop the opponent's king, right? Then for ease of calculations, you can think about uh, this floating square rule, and couple of variations are there for this one. So first is, if less than two squares are present between the pawns, then it's winning for white. If the square forms, then it's winning for black. And if king cannot stop black opponent's king from protecting one of the pawns, then as well it's winning for black, or the opponent. I think that covers it all. Yeah. Yeah. So next topic is three passed pawns. Essentially, this one states that if opponent's king, if you have three passed pawns, then that should be winning. But opponent should not have any uh, moves basically in the arsenal. So right now, if you'll see, these two pawns hold this king in a place, right? Uh, if I move this one, this loses, right? But this king cannot move on its own. So let's say, so the key move here is king b1. This is the only thing that wins. Why it wins? Let's calculate couple of things first. We know king cannot move. If king goes anywhere, pawn or the other pawn will advance, and this is straight up winning. So black needs to, the basic criteria basically is, uh, Opponent's king cannot move. He needs to hold either your pawns, or he's stuck behind something in endgame. It will be a very this is a very particular position that may arise, but in very few scenarios, I'll say. So what's the idea here? Why king b1 wins? So let's see all three moves. King b2, and this pawn cannot advance. That's the simple rule. Otherwise, I'll capture and capture. So what happens if I advance a3? King takes a3, and this still loses because I cannot advance these two pawns. What happens if I do a3? Then king a2, and the same thing happens. Okay, king b3, I cannot advance this pawn. If I move this one, I capture, and still this cannot come because I'll capture both the pawns. If I move ahead, b3 seems to be holding, but king c1, and none of the pawns will get promoted. Same happens for the opposite two pawns. Basically here white is winning if black is in a zugzwang position. He has to move, but he cannot move any other thing. Having this sort of pawns or a structure where black has to move is very difficult to come up with. So a very particular situation, but can come up. So we just need to make sure we recall the move king b1, because in this way we can hold three passed pawns. Of course, if even a single pawn is missing, then black do not need to move anything, right? So if even if this pawn is missing, right, then simply king h7, and no matter what I do, king will come and he'll help out. So this is winning this, we do not need to calculate. So three passed pawns always winning, but the condition is opponent's king needs to be stuck in a particular corner. So now let's look at the position of simultaneous queening. If it's white to play, this particular position is winning, and the only positions which are winning are if the pawn is on the central squares, of course the d2 e2, same goes for opposite colors if you reverse the positions, but d2 e2 and b2 g2. In particular scenarios, this is draw. The anything on the bishop files is a draw. Why? Simply the king hides on the last two squares, so h1 or e1. If your opponent does not know how to stalemate, then you can continue to try and win. But the basic idea is if this pawn is on f1, queen can try threaten to capture. But if the queen captures the f2 pawn, your king is stuck on h1 and has no legal moves. So this particular scenario is winning for white. We should memorize the maneuver how we can move ahead. So simplest way here would be come close to the king, right? If king e1, we give a check on e4. This is the basic pattern. Here, 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 right? So king f2, of course. If king d1, then we move our king up. Queen will threaten the pawn, and king comes to help. Again a simple check, e3. Now king needs to move to d1 square to keep protecting the pawn, and that's when we move our king up. This process will keep on repeating the simple pattern. First start from this position, it can start with blocking the pawn, then check up, threaten, and again a check, and keep moving up. This way your king can reach up to the d3 position, and then you can capture. Of course king has legal moves on e to go to e3 or c, yeah, e3 basically, yeah, e1 basically, just the only legal move. There will be c1, depends where your queen is. So why we know why f files or bishop files are losing or a draw, but the simple idea is in this situation, right? Let's say your queen somehow managed to reach here, and so this is where you get a check, your king moves here, and it's white to move now. Then you can try to bring your king in, right? Oops, let's slow this. So I'll try this way. Again, same pattern we can try. Check. One here. And now here. So now queen can capture or king can move, but in both scenarios, if the king moves, then I queen, and it's a definitely a draw. It's quite simple. But if queen captures, then I have no legal moves. So this one is a draw. So one thing to remember is the bishop files are a draw. Same goes for this one as well. So this will be a draw if the king is in the same row as the pawn, basically the second row or the seventh row. Here you can't force the king into the h1 square, right? The king will shuffle here, but he'll never go to h1, so your queen cannot force it to get a breathing move, which basically lets your king move up. So let's imagine, so here queen b7 to stop from moving, king g1, and king h1. Yeah, no legal moves. So this basically is a trick. King can hide on h1 or a1, and if the queen moves anywhere else, it will go on perpetuating, so the king cannot move. So that's why the end files are draw and the bishop files are draw, because king can hide on h1 or a1, and the rest of the places it's winning. In this scenario as well, it's winning if the opponent's king is a little bit higher. So in this case, queen can go to, simple idea is queen can first stop from pawn from pushing, and since black king needs to like go this route, queen will go here and stop the pawn straight up. So either you stop, basic idea is you anyhow you have to stop the opponent's pawn from queening. Either you can block it by the queen if queen has that maneuver available, or you force opponent's king to go in front of the pawn. And we know the basic tricks, two different tricks where king can hide on h1 or a1, and queen is basically not able to capture this pawn, otherwise it's a stalemate. So that's one more trick for the endgames.